There's no smoke without fire, as the saying goes, and there's a bellowing amount of smoke coming out of West Ham at the moment with regard to Julen Lopetegui, well, whichever one it is. I guess we better learn it at some point soon, because it looks like he may well be West Ham's next manager. We discussed it on this channel about a week ago. I said that I'd heard that there'd been a presentation made by him, not only been interviewed, but I don't know whether it was a presentation or he'd been certainly outlined his philosophy. He'd outlined what he saw as the way he would do things at West Ham, how the direction in which he saw the club going, and apparently it was very, very well received, this presentation. Apparently David Sullivan really liked it. He's jumped to the top of the list with the bookies. I think Jacob Steinberg a couple of days ago also indicated that he had been interviewed by the club. I think Ornstein had also said that it's happened, and now TalkSport are also reporting that there was indeed a meeting. I talk about no smoke without fire. I mean, there's a lot of it. I think we can all conclude now that little bit of news that happened sort of a couple of days ago that said there's been no meeting, absolute rubbish. There has been, and there's one thing we know, there's been a meeting with Ruben Amorim, there's been a meeting with Lopetegui. So clearly West Ham are looking for a new manager. I don't think anybody's trying to waste anyone's time here. I think we are genuinely doing that. I mean, we talk about smoke, no smoke without fire. Maybe it's a bit of smoke and mirrors. Maybe it's to deflect away from who our real candidate is. But I can't see it. I think anyone we're interviewing, we are seriously interested in. Bear in mind, one of us has turned us down in terms of Amorim, and one of them is impressing the chairman. Then, I think you may well have your answer there, quite frankly. Don't rule out, by the way, David Moyes retaining his job. I spoke about a couple of days ago, how's David Moyes going to motivate himself? How's he going to motivate the players? How's he going to basically get himself up for the run-in when he knows he's technically a dead man walking? Well, maybe he can. I do believe that all this manager talk, Sullivan talk, Steiten talk has deflected a lot of the attention away from the team following a really crappy performance against Crystal Palace, where normally if there wasn't all these other stories going around, everyone would still be talking about Crystal Palace, talking about the manager. There's not been so much of it. Moyes has been almost like a footnote in the story about West Ham manager, which is ironic considering he is actually the West Ham manager. Look, results have gone in West Ham's favour. Maybe not the West Ham, no, maybe not the Manchester United one, but results have gone in West Ham's favour. No doubt about that at all. And I think, it may even happen last night, I think Manchester City thumping Brighton was good for West Ham. Newcastle losing, certainly good for West Ham. Bournemouth are breathing down our necks a little bit. But if West Ham win their games, then we can still qualify for Europe. If that happens, do not rule out David Moyes retaining his job at West Ham. That is still very much, it's not a likelihood, because I don't think we can win all those games necessarily. But if we do, don't rule out David Moyes keeping the job. Look, Liverpool looks absolutely cream crackers. Not just in terms of energy, but devoid of ideas when they played Everton in the week. Chelsea are a bit of a basket case of a club at the moment. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that when you look and think, hold on, maybe we could win, we get a point in one of those games and win the other one, and if we beat Luton, I mean, we're in the mix. We are in the mix for European football, if that's the case. You may well see a phoenix-like rise from the ashes from David Moyes on that. But back on to Lopetegui. This is an interesting one, a really interesting one. Sullivan's not going to be oblivious to the noises coming out. He knows it's not going to be the popular appointment. That being said, I am really intrigued by Sullivan's thinking on this. Because if he's been impressed by this manager, it clearly is all about impressing him. He'll be convinced that he's the best man for the job. And I think the dynamic I'm very interested in, I mentioned it the other day, is how much this will annoy Tim Steiten. How much will this basically, I guess, handcuff, straitjacket, if you want, Tim Steiten's role at the club. If you're going to have this manager coming in who wants sort of to oversee everything and wants, total control over transfers, there's really no point in Tim Steiten. I think it's a brave call from Sullivan because, as I mentioned before, at the moment, David Moyes the pantomime villain. If Sullivan appoints this guy and gets it wrong, he is all focus from West Ham fans, sort of anger and wrath turns to David Sullivan. That absolutely will happen. That being said, I do think Sullivan will be confident that this guy will work out, which is why he's doing it. You've also got to appreciate David Sullivan probably doesn't ultimately not so much care what West Ham fans think. Everybody, I guess, wants to be loved in that sense. But I think possibly doesn't respect our opinion. I would imagine he's probably looking at it and thinking, well, hold on, you lot all wanted him out last season. In the end, he got us out the relegation fight and we won a trophy. So, shows how much you lot know. I wouldn't be surprised if he's thinking that sort of thing. He's probably thinking that he doesn't want the manager to be a trial by fan support or whatever it is. And I would agree with that. I don't think he should overly listen to fans in terms of him choosing his next manager. I do think he should listen to his director of football, though. And we're making a lot of assumptions at the moment. We're assuming that Tim Stuyton is not rubber stamping this. That he doesn't got rubber stamping, but not approving it. All I would say about Lopetegui is if he's as impressive as everybody says, and even Guardiola says he's impressive, he's always been in awe of him as a person. I think that's what he said. I think he said he's in awe of him as a person. Didn't say as a coach, said as a person. But he says a lot of nice things about everyone, doesn't he? I guess he's sort of that kind of guy, Guardiola. It would be very, very odd, I guess, for Lopetegui to do this presentation and not schmooze Stuyton at the same time. So maybe we're just all assuming that Stuyton's going to walk away. Maybe that's not the case at all. Maybe he can work more closely with this guy. What I do find odd is that he was very happy to have a public falling out. I'm talking about Lopetegui here. He was very happy to have a public falling out with the Wolves hierarchy. And I found that to be a little bit odd. Well, no, it's not odd. You know, sometimes some managers are like that. Some managers are attritional. They just fall out with people. Found Jose Mourinho to be like that. When you look at it, he had a bit of a falling out at Real Madrid as well. And he most certainly had a bit of the same when he was Spain boss. So you've got someone with a record of falling out with club presidents, which by and large is what Sullivan is in continental terms. That's a weird appointment, isn't it? So the one thing we know about people like this, and I say people like this, I mean, they can all be impressive at first. They can all make a good presentation. I've mentioned on numerous occasions, I think Jose Mourinho is probably a really charming and funny man. That is not beyond doubt as far as I'm concerned. I just think after a period of time, he starts to fall out with people. It was what I said about Thomas Tuchel as well. So I do find it odd, because that's part of the due diligence as well, isn't it? When you're going to look to appoint someone. How well is this person going to do within the framework of the club? What's their football pedigree going to be like? What type of football do they play? But am I going to be able to liaise with them? Am I going to be able to get on with them? So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, just maybe, Sullivan's aware of that and he's not that bothered about it. Maybe he thinks he can manage the situation. Maybe he doesn't care, or maybe he doesn't know. I think the last one would be the most concerning of them. But I think for him to push this forward, we hear that there are people within West Ham, and I think it was Jacob Steinberg who said this. There were people within West Ham who were advising against appointing Lopetegui, and that Sullivan was very much on his own. I'm pretty sure that's what I read anyway. If that's the case, then you've got to be pretty strong, I think, to go against what seems to be the general consensus of the fan base and what your advisors in club are telling you and what other people at the club want. If you get that wrong, there's no coming back from that. There is no coming back from that. But we are dealing with somebody who I think is quite robust. He's probably taken an awful lot of criticism throughout his life, Sullivan. So he's probably handled worse things than this. Then I just want to get to the point that if we were to appoint this manager, and I do think it's looking more likely. Personally, I would get behind him. But I just think it's really, really important that I think it's made clear to the chairman that this is not the people's choice, as it were. And we've been here before. So remember running a poll on Hammers Chat when after David Moyes' first stint at West Ham. And it was a lot of us didn't want David Moyes to continue. He'd saved us from relegation, but a lot of us thought, anyone would have saved us from relegation in that season. His football wasn't great, and it was a lot of West Ham fans wanted a change. We ran a poll at Hammers Chat, and it's still there. It's still there for anyone to see. Pellegrini wasn't in the top 10. And when I started looking around other places, other social media, other West Ham websites as well, Pellegrini wasn't polling particularly high. My point I'm making is the fans did not demand Manuel Pellegrini. They just wanted a better style of football than David Moyes. Other names featured more prominently on the list. However, when Pellegrini didn't work out, David Sullivan said, well, the fans asked for him. Well, we didn't. That wasn't the case. There is documented proof that wasn't the case. So I just think it's really, really important to say that now, just in case it's ever trotted out that, well, West Ham fans, you lot asked, you wanted David Moyes out, and you asked for Lopetegui. Well, you know, that wouldn't be accurate. That wouldn't be an accurate reflection. But I don't want to demean any new manager. I've seen like the Spanish David Moyes. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. I think possibly one of the differences may be Lopetegui's probably better at a defensive setup than David Moyes. We just conceded a horrific number of goals, haven't we, this season? I think he's probably better at that. I think he probably would be more possession-based as well. So, look, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? And certainly what I wouldn't be doing is Lopetegui comes in is start criticising him and slagging him off and stuff like that. No. I mean, you know, get behind him, he'd be the West Ham manager and sort of hope for the best. And hope, by the way, that my concerns were unfounded, that actually he was going to play an expensive game, that he would get on with Tim Steidten, that he would promote players from the youth academy. And actually, turns out that actually I'm wrong, and actually David Sullivan was right. That would be the best scenario. That really, really would. But so I just think, yes, I'm not going to start moaning about Lopetegui as a failure before he's even managed a game at West Ham. But it does look like he certainly is the front runner. But with the bookies, as I say, everyone's reporting on it now. And I think it's a big risk. I think it's a big risk from David Sullivan. But then again, David Sullivan probably thinks getting rid of David Moyes is a big risk. So this is probably less risky than anyone else. He's dealing with somebody that has a recent history with Wolverhampton Wanderers of saving a club and keeping them in the Premier League. And I do wonder if that is just how David Sullivan looks at West Ham. Wants West Ham to be in the Premier League. With a view to making the ultimate sale. Which I think has taken a bit of a hit, quite frankly. I think that the moment Karen Brady had to fly out to Dubai and search for investment probably gave a little indication that maybe, just maybe, there wasn't this investment on the horizon which was suddenly going to flood into the club at the end of the season, this season, which is what so many of us have been told. So I wouldn't be surprised if actually, next season nothing changes. The ownership model is exactly as it is now. Going to be very, very interesting to watch. Anyway, there you go. Big game for David Moyes before Liverpool. Not unwinnable. But yes, for everybody getting excited about the managerial situation, I still think the two most likely candidates are that we get Julen Lopetegui or we keep David Moyes.